He said my daughter was too emotional, that this house needed structure, that we couldn't build a future like this. So I canceled the wedding and let him keep the empty house. My name's Ellen Walker. I'm 35. I live in a coastal neighborhood in San Diego, California, and I work as a marketer from home most days. 3 years ago, my husband passed away unexpectedly. One ordinary morning, he kissed me goodbye, said he'd be home for dinner, and never made it. That left me and my 3-year-old daughter. Just the two of us figuring out how to keep breathing in a house that suddenly felt way too quiet. We managed. We laughed at stupid memes, burned pancakes together, said, "I love you," even when one of us was slamming a door. She's smart, sensitive, stubborn in the best teenage way. And she still wears her dad's old hoodie when the nights get long. I thought we were finally steady again until I met someone who seemed like he could fit right into our little world. He was funny, steady, divorced, and had that quiet tiredness in his eyes that I recognized instantly. We started dating, grocery runs turned into weekend walks along the beach, and before I knew it we were engaged. I thought we had made it through the hardest part. I was wrong. Because when someone starts seeing your child as a problem to fix instead of a person to love, you're not building a family. You're standing on a landmine. And when that landmine finally went off, it wasn't loud explosions or screaming matches. It was one calm sentence that made everything crystal clear. If you've ever had to choose between a relationship and your kid, hit subscribe and drop a comment below. What would you have done? A few months into dating, things moved smoothly. Owen listened when I talked about work deadlines or how the ocean air in San Diego helped clear my head after long days. He brought flowers once, not flashy ones, but the kind from a local market near the beach. On our fourth outing, we grabbed coffee and walked the coastal path, where he shared stories about his dog from his previous marriage. It felt easy, no pressure. I waited until I was sure before bringing him around my daughter. One afternoon at the park by the shore, with waves audible in the distance, Owen approached carefully. He carried her favorite iced tea, sat at a distance, and said nothing at first. She eyed him suspiciously but took the drink. "Thanks," she muttered. Over time, he didn't try to play dad. He just showed up, helped with homework once when she struggled with math, laughed at her jokes even if they fell flat. She started calling him by name after a couple weeks. A small win. We began including her in more plans. Evenings turned into casual dinners on the deck, grilling fish caught from a nearby pier. One Saturday, we drove to a quiet cove for a day out. Owen packed sandwiches, nearly forgot the sunscreen, but recovered with a quick stop at a beach shop. She splashed in the shallow water, and he joined in, pretending to chase seagulls. "You're not bad at this," she told him later, drying off with a towel. He grinned and replied, "High praise." I watched them, feeling a warmth I hadn't in years. As things got serious, we talked about the future. Owen suggested moving in together. His place was larger, with a view of the Pacific that made mornings better. I agreed. And soon after, he proposed during a quiet sunset stroll along the sand. The ring was simple, fitting perfectly. "Ellen, let's make this our home," he said, and I nodded, excited. My daughter wasn't jumping for joy, but she hugged me and whispered, "As long as you're okay, Mom." We packed up our old spot and settled into his house, rooms echoing with new possibilities. Not long after, Owen mentioned his mother visiting. "She's been wanting to meet you both properly," he explained while we organized the kitchen cabinets. I said, "Sure," figuring it would be fine. Alice flew in from Ohio, arriving with baked goods and that teacher-like poise from her retired days. She hugged me tightly, then turned to my daughter, who was lounging in shorts and a t-shirt, scrolling on her phone. "Hello, dear. You must be the one I've heard so much about." My daughter looked up, smiled politely, and went back to her room. That first dinner, Alice helped set the table and commented on the casual setup. "Everything's so relaxed here by the coast, charming." Really. But girls at that age can be a bit too emotional without some structure around the house. Owen chuckled and agreed lightly. I smiled, changed the subject to the weather, but noted how she watched my daughter pick at her food, suggesting a routine might help. It was subtle, wrapped in concern, but it lingered like salt in the air. The next day, Alice poked around the living room, straightening cushions without asking. "Just tidying a bit," she said when I walked in. My daughter came down for breakfast late, and Alice raised an eyebrow. We have schedules for a reason, sweetheart. It builds character. Owen added. She's got a point, keeps things running smooth. I stepped in gently, saying we liked our weekends flexible. But inside, I wondered if this was just adjustment or something more. Evenings that week, Alice shared stories from her teaching career, always circling back to discipline. One night, as we sat outside hearing the distant surf, she handed my daughter a book on time management. This helped my students might curb some of that emotional ups and downs. My daughter took it quietly, but her eyes met mine with a question. Owen patted her shoulder, saying, "Give it a try." I felt the first real unease, like a wave pulling back before it crashes. The next morning after Alice arrived, the house smelled like fresh coffee and something baking, probably her idea of a welcoming gesture. She was already in the kitchen when I came down, rearranging the spice rack so the labels faced out perfectly. "Good morning, Ellen." I noticed the cabinets were a little disorganized, thought I'd help while everyone sleeps in. She smiled like it was the most natural thing. My daughter wandered in around 9:30, hair messy from sleep, wearing the same hoodie she'd had on yesterday. Alice glanced at the clock on the wall. We usually start the day earlier back home. It sets a good tone. My daughter poured cereal without answering, then carried the bowl to the living room couch. Alice followed her eyes. Eating in the living room? That's interesting. In my house, meals stayed at the table helps everyone stay connected. Owen walked in, kissed my cheek, and poured himself coffee. Mom's right about the routine thing. Keeps the place running smoother. He said it casually, like commenting on the weather. My daughter looked up from her phone, spoon halfway to her mouth. "I like eating here. It's comfortable." Alice tilted her head. "Comfortable is fine, but a little structure prevents things from getting too emotional around here." She said it softly, almost kindly, but the word landed like a small stone in still water. I tried to lighten it. "We've always been flexible with breakfast. It works for us." Alice nodded but kept going. "Of course. But teenagers thrive on predictability. I saw it every year in my classroom. Kids who had clear expectations were less overwhelmed by their feelings." My daughter set her bowl down harder than necessary and headed back upstairs without a word. Later that afternoon, Alice suggested we all go for a walk along the boardwalk. The sun was out, waves rolling and steady, tourists snapping photos. She walked between Owen and me, chatting about Ohio winters, then turned to my daughter trailing behind. "You should join us up front, dear. Fresh air clears the mind." My daughter stayed a few steps back, earbuds in. Alice sighed quietly to me. "She's so withdrawn. Maybe some rules would bring her out of that shell." Owen squeezed my hand. "She's just adjusting to having more people around." But I noticed how he nodded along with his mom. When we got back, Alice went straight to the laundry room. I found her folding clothes, my daughter's included. These were in the dryer too long. "They'll wrinkle." She handed me a stack. I sorted them by color too, makes putting away easier. My daughter came down for water and saw it. "Those are mine." Alice smiled. "I know. Just helping out. You'll thank me when everything has its place." That evening, we ate on the deck with the ocean breeze coming in. Alice served seconds before anyone asked. My daughter pushed food around her plate. "I'm not that hungry." Alice leaned forward. "You need to eat properly. Skipping meals makes mood swing more." Owen looked at me. "She's been picking at food lately. Maybe a set dinner time would help." My daughter stared at her plate, then excused herself quietly. I followed her to the hallway. "You okay?" She shrugged. "It's weird having someone rearrange everything." I hugged her quickly. "It's just a visit. She'll go home soon." But as I said it, I felt the unease settle deeper, like the tide pulling farther out than usual. The days blurred into small adjustments that didn't feel small. Alice suggested bedtime routines, commented on screen time, even left a chore chart on the fridge as a gentle reminder. Owen started echoing her more little comments like "Mom knows what works," or "A little discipline goes a long way." My daughter grew quieter, spending more time in her room with the door closed. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that blending families took time, but every time Alice used the word emotional like it was a flaw, something inside me tightened. One afternoon, while Alice napped, I sat on the deck alone, listening to the waves crash. Owen joined me. "Mom means well, she just wants everyone to be happy." I looked at him. Happy doesn't always look like schedules and charts. He shrugged. Maybe not. But chaos isn't great either. That was the first time I realized the house no longer felt entirely ours. By midweek, the small comments had turned into steady suggestions that filled every corner of the day. Alice had taken to leaving notes around the house, little post-its on the fridge, reminding everyone of helpful habits, like putting dishes straight into the dishwasher instead of the sink. She never asked if we wanted them, they just appeared. One evening, she came back from a quick trip to a nearby mall with a shopping bag. "I saw this and thought of you," she said, pulling out a simple blouse and knee-length skirt in soft pastel. She held it up toward my daughter. "Try it on. It's modest, flattering for your age." My daughter stared at the outfit like it was from another planet. "I don't really wear skirts like that." Alice's smile stayed in place. "You could give it a chance. Sometimes stepping out of our comfort zone helps us grow." Owen looked over from the couch. "It's nice, Mom picked it out special. Just try it once." My daughter took the clothes upstairs without arguing, but when she came back down, she was still in her jeans and hoodie. Alice's expression tightened for a second before she recovered. "Well, maybe later then." The rest of dinner passed quietly, forks scraping plates, waves audible through the open window. Afterward, my daughter disappeared to her room again. The next day, Alice decided the living room needed a fresh feel. I came home from a quick client call to find throw pillows rearranged, family photos shifted to make room for a new vase she'd bought. "It brightens the space," she explained when I asked. My daughter walked in, saw the changes and froze. "Where's my picture with Dad?" The one of them at the beach, laughing, had been moved to a side table behind a plant. Alice waved a hand. "It's still here, just balanced better." Too many frames can feel cluttered, emotionally overwhelming. That night, tension spilled over at dinner. My daughter barely ate, pushing salad around. Alice leaned in. "You really should finish your vegetables. Skipping nutrients affects mood stability." My daughter set her fork down. "I'm not hungry, and I don't need lectures on what I eat." Owen cleared his throat. "Hey, easy. Mom's just trying to help." Alice nodded. "Exactly. Love sometimes means guiding, even when it's not popular." I felt my jaw tighten. She said she's not hungry. Let's leave it. The table went silent except for the distant sound of the surf. My daughter excused herself, footsteps quick up the stairs. Owen sighed. "She's getting defensive lately. Maybe she needs more boundaries." Alice reached over and patted his arm. "You see it too. That's why routines matter." Later, when the house quieted, my phone buzzed. It was Skylar, my older sister. She lived a short drive away in Carlsbad and had been checking in since Alice arrived. "How's the visit going?" she asked right away. I told her about the notes, the outfit, the moved photo. Skylar listened without interrupting. "Sounds like she's redecorating more than visiting." "And Owen's backing her up?" I admitted he was. Skylar paused. "Ellen, you know I'm not one to jump in. But if she's making your kid feel like a guest in her own home, that's not blending. That's overriding. Watch how far it goes." I hung up feeling a little less alone, but the weight didn't lift. Upstairs, my daughter's door was closed, light off early. I knocked softly. She opened it just enough. "I hate how everything feels different now." I pulled her into a hug. "I know. We'll figure it out." But as I said it, I realized I was starting to see the house and the man I'd said yes to through clearer eyes. The next afternoon, Alice announced she'd extended her stay another few days. "I miss my boy, and I want to help settle things here." Owen smiled. "That's great, Mom." I forced a nod, but inside the unease had grown into something sharper. Every small change felt like another piece of our life being quietly rewritten. The weekend brought a family BBQ to break the growing tension, or so I hoped. Owen suggested it early Friday morning, saying it would be good to have friends over, relax by the fire pit on the patio with the ocean just visible beyond the dunes. I agreed, thinking a casual gathering might ease things. We invited a few neighbors and some of Owen's coworkers, the kind of low-key event San Diego does well: burgers on the grill, cold drinks, music playing softly from a speaker. Alice took charge of preparations like it was her own backyard. She set up folding tables with checkered cloths, arranged salads in neat rows, even labeled the drink cooler with a sign that read, "Help yourself, portion control encouraged." My daughter helped carry chairs out, but stayed quiet, sticking close to me most of the time. Guests started arriving around 4. The patio filled with chatter, laughter over shared stories about work and weekend plans. Owen manned the grill, flipping patties, looking relaxed for the first time in days. Alice circulated with a tray of appetizers, smiling at everyone, but her eyes kept drifting toward my daughter, who sat on the edge of a lounge chair, scrolling on her phone instead of joining the group. One of the neighbors asked my daughter about school. She answered politely but briefly, then went back to her screen. Alice walked over, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, put the phone away for a bit. People are here to talk, not stare at screens." My daughter looked up. "I'm just checking something." Alice's tone stayed light but firm. "We're having family time. It's polite to engage." Owen glanced over from the grill. "Yeah, come join us." "Mom's right, let's keep it social." My daughter set the phone down, but her face was tight. A few minutes later, when someone complimented her hoodie, "Cool design, where'd you get it?" Alice chimed in before my daughter could answer. "She has nicer things upstairs. We got her a lovely blouse this week, but she hasn't tried it yet." The group laughed lightly, thinking it was a joke. My daughter's cheeks flushed. "I like this one." Alice smiled wider. "Of course you do. But sometimes we need to step up our presentation, especially around company." The comment hung there. One of Owen's coworkers tried to change the subject, asking about the view. But Alice wasn't done. She turned to the group. "You know, girls at this age can get so caught up in their feelings. A little structure helps them stay grounded." She gestured toward my daughter. "She's been a bit too emotional lately, nothing a good routine can't fix." The patio went quieter. My daughter stood up abruptly. "I'm not emotional. I just don't like people deciding who I should be." Her voice was steady but her hands shook slightly. Alice looked surprised, then hurt. "I'm only trying to help, dear." Owen set down the tongs. "Hey, let's not make a scene. Mom's just concerned." I stepped between them. "She's allowed to feel how she feels. And she's allowed to wear what she wants." Alice turned to me. "Ellen, I'm not the enemy here. I've raised a son who values order. You could use a bit of that too." Owen nodded slowly. "She's got a point. Things have felt chaotic since we moved in together." My daughter looked at me, eyes wide. I took her hand. "We're going inside for a minute." As we walked away, I heard Alice say to the group, "See? Too emotional for this house. A change of environment might do wonders." Inside the kitchen, my daughter leaned against the counter. "Why does she get to say that?" I hugged her. "She doesn't. Not anymore." Skylar texted right then, perfect timing. "How's the BBQ? Everything okay?" I typed back quickly. "Not really. Alice just called her too emotional in front of everyone." Skylar replied almost instantly, "Get out of there if it's getting worse. You don't have to stay in a house that doesn't feel like yours." Back outside, the party continued, but the mood had shifted. Owen came in later, found me in the hallway. "Mom didn't mean it like that. She's just old school." I looked at him. "She meant every word. And you let her say it." He rubbed his neck. "I'm trying to keep the peace." I didn't answer. The peace he wanted wasn't the kind I recognized anymore. That night, after everyone left and the patio was cleared, Alice sat on the couch with a cup of tea. "I think we all need a fresh start. There's a wonderful program in Vermont, behavioral support for teens. Structured, outdoor activities, counselors. It could help her build resilience." Owen looked at me hopefully. "It's not forever. Just a year or so. We could breathe again." I stared at them both. The house that once felt like a new beginning now felt like a cage. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. After the BBQ fallout, the house felt different, like the air had thickened and every room carried the echo of that afternoon. Owen waited until Alice had gone to bed before he sat me down on the deck. The ocean was dark beyond the dunes, waves steady but distant. He spoke quietly. "No anger, just exhaustion. We can't keep going like this," he started. "She's too emotional for this house. Everything turns into a fight or silence. We need structure. Ellen, not constant pushback." I stayed silent, letting him continue. "I found a program in Vermont. It's not punishment. It's support counselors, outdoor work, academics. A year, maybe 2. She comes back stronger. And we finally breathe." I looked at him. You're asking me to send my daughter away because she's having feelings. He rubbed his face. I'm asking for a way forward. For all of us. If we stay like this, the marriage won't work. I love you, but I can't live in chaos. The words settled between us like salt on skin. I thought about the ring still on my finger, the house we just started calling home, the life I'd pictured. Then I thought about my daughter upstairs, door closed, probably replaying Alice's words from the patio. Too emotional for this house. The phrase kept repeating in my head. I took the ring off slowly and placed it on the table between us. I'm not sending her anywhere. Owen's eyes widened. Ellen, I cut him off. No. You don't get to decide that. She's not a problem to solve. She's my daughter. And if this house can't accept her as she is, then it isn't our home. He stared at the ring. You're choosing her over us? I stood up. I'm choosing her. And myself. That's not a choice against you, it's realizing you were never really with us. He didn't argue right away. He just sat there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The next morning I started packing. Not dramatically, just the essentials. My daughter helped without asking questions at first. When she saw the boxes, she paused. We're leaving. I nodded. We're going back to our old place for now, or wherever feels right. But we're not staying here. She hugged me hard, the first real one in weeks. Thanks, Mom. Owen watched from the doorway while we loaded the car. Alice stood beside him, arms crossed. This is rash, she said. Think about what you're throwing away. I looked at her directly. I'm thinking about what I'm keeping. Owen stepped forward. Ellen, we can talk about this. Mom can go home early. We can try again. I shook my head. No. You already showed me what you choose when it gets hard. Skylar arrived an hour later to help with the last load. She didn't say much, just carried boxes and gave my daughter a quick side hug. When everything was in the car, I turned to Owen one last time. The house is yours. Keep it empty if you want. I'm done filling it with pieces that don't fit. He didn't reply. Alice muttered something about regret, but I didn't listen. We drove away with the windows down, salt air rushing in. My daughter reached over and turned on the radio some old song we both knew the words to. She sang off key. And for the first time in weeks I laughed. Really laughed. The house shrank in the rearview mirror until it was just a speck against the coastline. In the weeks following our move, life started to settle into a rhythm that felt familiar again. We found a small rental a few blocks from the beach, nothing fancy. Just enough space for the two of us. With windows that caught the morning light off the water. My daughter unpacked her things slowly, hanging the photo of her and her dad back on the wall where it belonged. No notes on the fridge, no rearranged pillows, no quiet judgments hanging in the air. Just us. She started talking more small things at first, like complaining about math homework or laughing at a video she found online. One evening we sat on the floor eating takeout tacos straight from the bag, and she looked around the room. It feels normal here. I smiled. Yeah. It does. We didn't talk about the house we left behind much. It wasn't necessary anymore. Owen tried reaching out twice. The first time was a text a week after we left. Can we talk? I miss you both. I didn't reply. The second was a voicemail a few days later, his voice quieter than I remembered. I didn't realize how much pressure Mom was putting on everyone. I should have stood up sooner. Please, let's figure this out. I listened once, then deleted it. There was nothing left to figure out. Then came the call from my accountant. She handled our taxes every year and had noticed something odd when reviewing the prior return. Owen had listed my daughter as a dependent on his filing, claiming her even though he had no legal right, no guardianship, no marriage tying us together. It was a clear discrepancy. The IRS had flagged it during a routine review of his return, and now an audit was underway. The fallout was swift. Owen worked for a mid-sized engineering firm where trust and compliance were non-negotiable. A tax issue like that, especially one involving someone else's child without consent, raised red flags about integrity. Within a month, he was let go. No public scandal, no headlines, just a quiet exit and a reference letter that said little. Word spread fast in professional circles along the coast. Invitations to industry events dried up. Friends who knew the story started distancing themselves. He moved back in with Alice in Ohio. She told anyone who asked that her son had been wronged by a woman who couldn't handle real family values. But the truth traveled too. People in San Diego who knew us both whispered about the claim attempt, the audit, the job loss. He wasn't the steady, reliable guy anymore. He was the one who tried to take a shortcut and paid for it. I never confronted him about the tax filing. There was no need. The consequences spoke for themselves. My daughter asked once, months later, while we walked along the shore at sunset, "Is he okay?" I thought for a second. I don't know. And it's not my job to find out anymore. She nodded and kept walking, kicking sand with her sneakers. We kept building our days. Mornings started with coffee on the tiny balcony, evenings with music or movies on the couch. She joined a soccer team at school, nothing serious, just something to run around in. I took on a few more freelance projects, enough to keep things steady. Skylar came over most weekends, bringing coffee and stories that made us laugh until our sides hurt. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't leaving the house or ending the engagement. It was realizing I had almost traded my daughter's right to be herself for a version of family that demanded she change. True family doesn't ask you to shrink your feelings to fit the space. It makes room for them. It accepts the emotional ups and downs because that's what being human looks like, especially for a 13-year-old figuring out the world after losing so much. I chose her. I chose us. And in doing that, I chose myself too. The house we left behind stays empty, or at least it feels that way in my mind. But the one we have now is full of noise, of laughter, of ordinary days that don't need anyone else's rules to feel right. If you've ever had to walk away from something that looked perfect on paper to protect what really matters, you know it's not easy. But it's worth it. Every single time.